Castlevania is a gaming franchise that has been around for a very long time and is considered a classic among retro gamers. The early NES Castlevanias are notorious for being frustrating, difficult, and just flat out sadistic with its difficulty, but still a classic nonetheless. When Castlevania made its debut in the 3D world, it was met with terrible reviews. The game just didn't look good, the graphics were terrible, the camera angles were awful, and the gameplay just wasn't fun. When the series went back to its side-scrolling roots for the PlayStation, it was met once again with great reception. To this day, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is considered one of the best in the series. But there was one 3D Castlevania game that was announced by Sega but quietly fell into obscurity. And so in today's video, I'll be discussing the unreleased Castlevania Resurrection. Castlevania Resurrection was slated to be released for the Sega Dreamcast as a launch title. And as many of you may know, the Dreamcast was to be released on September 9th, 1999. Not very long after the dreaded Castlevania 64, which was released January of the same year, but I'll get to that a little later on. The game was to focus on Sonia Belmont, who was last seen in Castlevania Legends, which was a Game Boy game released in 1998. Along with her was a new character, Victor Belmont, an 1800s vampire hunter who had abandoned his lineage in the Belmont family. He ran away from home at an early age, but he quickly began learning the art of fighting and warfare. He would eventually return to his birthplace where he was given the task to prove himself worthy of the Belmont name and defeat Dracula and his mistress. Now this story is set in 1666, directly before Simon Belmont's adventure in the original Castlevania for the NES. So how exactly is a hunter from the 1800s and a legendary heroine from the past meet up in the 1600s? Well, it was said that the story involved time travel. Supposedly these two were summoned somehow to slay the Count and Countess. There are also a few leaked concept images of what Sonia and Victor were initially supposed to look like. Now as far as Sonia goes, I have to censor a few of her images because they're kind of revealing. So if you want to take a look at them yourself, I'll have a link in the description below. The storyline of the game is as follows. The year is 1666. Dracula has returned to threaten the mortal world, summoning all of the power of hell. The Dark Countess of Castlevania has created a portal allowing Dracula to re-enter the material plane. Accompanied by foul creatures of the netherworld anxious to do their bidding, Dracula and his lover intend to join forces with the goal of final victory over the Belmonts and absolute dominion of the world. Their actions, however, have not gone unnoticed. Now, according to developers, Resurrection was not going to play like the Nintendo 64 predecessor, but rather a full action-oriented based game. Instead of focusing on many stages, the game would have had 5 stages, each with 5 to 8 subsections, which was quite lengthy. The team also did away with the terrible camera controls that plagued the Nintendo 64 Castlevania games. This alone makes me wish that I would have been able to play this game, as I think that the Castlevania 64 would have at least been kinda decent had it not been for those terrible camera angles and the player controls. Thankfully, there have been many images and renditions leaked of this game, including many of these enemy designs, which I think are pretty cool looking. Characters such as Frankenstein's monster, Wolfman, and Death itself were supposed to be bosses for a few of these levels. Now it's unknown as to whether the rest were regular enemies or bosses themselves, but either way, like I said before, they look pretty decent. Konami never stated how the story of Resurrection was going to unfold, but the rumor is that the player would have had a choice of selecting their character at the very beginning, and depending on who you chose, the character will end up crossing paths throughout the story. It would have been similar to Resident Evil 2 with Leon and Claire. Now personally, I kinda like this concept because it not only gives the player a different experience, but the overall gameplay and plot get delved into at different angles. One thing that I couldn't really find was actual gameplay footage of the game. Unfortunately, the only things that have surfaced are this trailer playing in the background and this short alpha tech demo of Sonia running around in like a little courtyard. And similar to my previous unreleased gaming videos, musical composer Mark Lindsay has also released a soundtrack that he composed of this game. Now again, due to copyright laws, I'm not going to actually play it on my video, but I'll have the link in the description below of his channel. Castlevania Resurrection was featured in quite a few magazines, including the September issue of the official Sega Dreamcast magazine, Dreamcast Magazine issue number 3, Sega Magazine issue number 69, Computer and Video Games Magazine number 213, and Electronic Gaming Monthly issue number 121. So this game wasn't one that went quietly, it was well advertised, and fans of the franchise were well aware of its existence from the very beginning. Things began to look sketchy when the game was delayed in June of 1999. Its cancellation is credited to many things, including the disagreements between the Japanese and American Konami teams, and of course the death of the Dreamcast to the announcement of the Sony PlayStation 2. There were also rumors that the game was not turning out very well. Art director Greg Ordian, however, stated that the game was canned due to Konami's lack of faith in the Sega Dreamcast. Castlevania Resurrection was cancelled the same day Sony announced the PlayStation 2. And that is all we know of Castlevania Resurrection. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out some of my other videos and follow us on social medias. A few other links are in the description below for awesome sites such as BitCultures, which I am now a part of, and Unseen64 as well. I'll see you all next time.